This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson On Demand.
I think it's a bit of thuggery. You want to blast the UC and Xavier players for being thugs when they get in fights? Or what about people like Ray LaHood, the transportation secretary? I think that's a bit of thuggery. Oh, it's different because he puts a good face on it. He comes to town and says he has a big bunch of money for the streetcar. But because it seems like he's doing something nice, oh, that's not thuggery, Doc. They're trying to help people. And because some people like the idea of the streetcar, they're helping people. But how is it not thuggery? How is it not thuggery with my tax dollars and your tax dollars if you don't want it spent there? See, if we have national defense, well, we all have a vested interest in that. So if they take our tax dollars, I'm not talking about wasting them or spending too much or going overboard, but if they take our tax dollars and apply them to national defense, it helps all of us. It defends America, and you and I can go about our lives. Take part in worshiping the way we do, living and raising our family the way we choose, even taking part in commerce and making money and earning a living. All of these things. We all have an interest in our tax dollars going to national defense. And if you look at, some other things, even the interstate, we all have an interest in that. Even if you don't drive, and even if you don't drive the interstates, you and I have an interest in that because the interstates are used to ship things. Sure, there's lots of things they're used for that we all have an interest in. You may like the interstate system, you may not, but we all do benefit from it. Some more than others, but we all do benefit from it. How is somebody in Chicago going to benefit from the streetcar in Cincinnati? How is somebody in Boston going to benefit from it? How do you and I benefit from the big dig in Chicago? Almost $1 billion wasted up there. It's thuggery. You and I don't benefit from it. We really have very little representation when it comes to our money being spent on the streetcar. If you don't live in the city of Cincinnati, you can't stop it. And as I said yesterday, where are your representatives? It's $11 million that Ray LaHood said, well, just shy of $11 million, that the federal government is going to pony up for the Cincinnati streetcar. You think Steve Shabbat or Jeannie Schmidt, you think they're that concerned about $11 million? I mean, if you ask them, they're going to say every dollar matters, Doc, blah, 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 and I agree. But in the grand scheme of things, they're there working on, funding the federal government. We're going to keep it open. They're there this week working on year-end issues like even continuing with the payroll tax deduction or payroll tax rates, extending those decreases. That's what they're working on. You're talking about things that are hundreds of billions of dollars, really, and things that affect each and every American. And even if something like the Cincinnati streetcar is in their district, it's $11 million. But for those senators and congressmen who it's not in their district, they're not that concerned with it. Where's our representation? It's thuggery. Oh, they put a good face on it and that. But you and I don't have a choice, and they simply come in and bully. They use some other tactics that seem nice, too. They persuade, they spin, they market and all that. But it's still thuggery with a good face on it. That's all. They're just bullying us. Take this streetcar. Continue at the streetcar. Again, from Ray LaHood's perspective, the mayor's asking for it. The citizens of Cincinnati, they want it. But the problem is, the citizens of Cincinnati are not exclusively paying for it, are they? If you, as a citizen of the city of Cincinnati, want to pay for the streetcar, if you want to, God bless you, go do it. If that's what you, as a citizen, think you want, so be it. I think you're being ridiculous, but hey, I'm not a citizen of the city of Cincinnati. So have at it. Good for you. Those are your tax dollars. But it's not just your tax dollars, it's my tax dollars. And the streetcar in Cincinnati is not going to benefit, I don't even think the citizens of Cincinnati, but certainly not anybody outside of Cincinnati. Now, yesterday, Tom Lucan called in, and he said that they weren't going to have a press conference when Ray LaHood came in and talked with Mark Mallery. But it turned out they did. They spoke a little bit. I'm going to play just a little clip of it for you.
We've never given up on this project, and the people of Cincinnati have said very clearly they want a streetcar in this city.
We love the streetcar project. We like this project very much, and we also like the fact that the people here like this project.
All right, first that was Mark Mallery, and then Ray LaHood, the transportation secretary. He's the transportation secretary at the federal level. The additional $11 million, roughly, that he's bringing in isn't from the citizens of Cincinnati. It's from everybody. So it doesn't matter if the citizens of Cincinnati like the streetcar project, as he said. Let me listen to this again.
We've never given up on this project,
Mark
and the
Mallery.
people of Cincinnati have said very clearly they want a streetcar in this city.
We love the streetcar project. We like this project very much, and we also like the fact that the people here like this project.
I've seen some statistics that say it could be over 70% of people in Cincinnati don't want it. Now, it's been on the ballot a couple times, and you and I can argue that it was confusing, it wasn't laid out properly, so on and so forth. And the citizens have voted to continue, even if 70% of the people don't want it, or 60 or whatever. And that's fine, you're right. It was on the ballot, and it's going to continue. Okay, fine. Even if 70% don't want it, they should have turned out and voted against it, confusing or not, should have got it done. That's fine, and you're right. And if Mark Mallery wants to get up there and say, we're going to continue with this project, I'll tell you how silly he is. I'll tell you how it's not going to bring in the money they want. It's going to continue to be subsidized. I'll tell you how it's going to be the white elephant 20, 30 years from now, and it will be. It will never do what they're claiming it will do, plain and simple. But if the citizens of Cincinnati want it, so be it. Don't ask me to pay for it. Just as I don't want Los Angeles to ask me to pay for theirs, or the Big Dig in Boston to ask me to pay for their roads in Boston area that's going to help their commute. I shouldn't have to pay for the citizens of Cincinnati to have a streetcar simply because Ray LaHood says he wants it. Here's the numbers. Streetcar so far is at about $100 million committed. Most of that from the city of Cincinnati, but you're looking at just under $30 million roughly that the federal government has already ponied up. The state of Ohio has bailed on theirs. But Ray LaHood now comes in and says, all right, we've got an additional just shy of $11 million, which will take the grand total of what the feds are putting up to just shy of $40 million. City of Cincinnati wants the federal government, in other words, all of us, to give them about 57 more of the $200 million that they're sprinkling all over the country on all kinds of projects. It's one thing if you make a solid argument that the federal government spending all of our money on individual projects in different parts of the country are good for all of us. I don't agree with that. I think it should be local. If you want a new road, a bridge, or whatever, a streetcar, something like that, it's not going to benefit everybody. You should pay for it. But even if you're saying they should do this, should it really be the streetcar? Is that the priority? I don't want to pay for it, Cincinnati. Sorry. I got my own things to worry about. I don't want to have to deal with it. I see Ray LaHood and others that come in and take part in this as simply just being thugs. They put a nice face on it. They'll spin it. They'll tell you people want it. They look like saviors because they're coming in with their little bag of money to sprinkle around, to help out, because they're helping, you know. But it's thuggery. I don't want it. I don't benefit from it, and I have no say in it. Certainly strong-arm tactics. I don't want it. I don't want to pay for it, and I have no say. I have no representation on this. How is that not strong-arm tactics? So it looks like it's going to continue. The streetcar, well on its way. All right, a bunch of people want to comment on it. If you want to share an email, comment via email, you can do it doc@700WLW.com. Or you can dial 513-749-7800, the big one, or pound 700 on AT&T. Your calls next on 700 WLW. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast for meteorologist Frank Marzullo. All right, you got the clouds breaking a little bit later today. Still not real warm. High about 40. Tonight, partly cloudy skies. And finally, the sunshine returns tomorrow. Still going to be cold, but I'll take it as long as the sunshine comes out. Tomorrow's high, about 42. 32 now at 700 WLW. There's some other information out about the streetcar. Dan Monk from the Cincinnati Business Courier has some information that you might want to hear. You might want to hear. The idea was to move the different utility lines, sewers, different water lines, and everything else that would be in the path of the streetcar. You would want to move those because if you ever have to do any work, what's going to happen? You have to tear up those streetcar lines in order to get to them. And if you want to do any additional work on the streetcar lines, you could potentially interrupt any of those utility services. So you got to make sure that those things work in conjunction and that they don't oppose each other. That one is not going to cause a problem for the other. So there's been the big question of how much it's going to cost to move the different utility lines and that. And, of course, the early predictions were much lower than they actually are. Then there's a battle. Should the city of Cincinnati pay for it? They want the county to put in some money and all of this. Well, Dan Monk from the Cincinnati Business Courier says that according to some internal memos, you know how they're going to deal with the cost overruns of moving the sewer lines? They're just not going to move them. That they plan to build the streetcar over the sewer lines instead of moving them. Isn't that great? Because then you don't have to pay for it, right? You don't have to pay to move the lines. Problem solved. Well, what happens is then, as soon as there is a sewer problem, as soon as they have to get in there and take care of something, they're going to have to rip up the streetcar line, costing the repair much, much more money. And disrupting service of the streetcar. So for the 4 people that will end up riding it a week, will not have service. And who's going to pay for all that? Ultimately, you and I will. That's a heck of a plan. So on top of being short-sighted about the idea of a streetcar, that they simply cannot look at the past, look at the Cincinnati subway and the other many failed projects in the tri-state and around the country, they also are going to apparently proceed in a way that will end up costing you and I even more money because they can't do the deal properly. What they're saying is we can't do things the right way because we don't have the money for it or we don't want to spend it. So we're going to do things the wrong way, which will cost us even more money down the road. How many times does stuff like this have to happen? How many times? Do you really feel you're being represented? Do you really feel that you have any say about the streetcar being built? Your tax dollars. If you're driving to work today and you're saying, you know what, I got to do holiday shopping and the bills, am I going to charge those? What am I going to do? And you've got that stress. Knowing that your money is going to this, do you really feel like you have any say? Because I don't feel like I'm being represented here. And the $11 million that Ray LaHood's bringing in on top of the other federal dollars, that is mine and yours, looks like we're going to need even more because as soon as there's a problem with the sewers, they're going to have to rip up the streetcar line. Let's go to Cincinnati now. Andy, you're on 700 WLW.
Yay! Oh, we got our money we needed for the streetcars. Hey, you know why they're going to let the sewer lines run under the cars, don't you?
Why is that?
One side, city crap. When it goes under the cars, it turns into liquid gold. Liquid gold. We're never going to have to rip those things up. Did you hear since they announced that gas prices have gone down, which is wonderful, and milk is free at the grocery stores?
Andy, that's a good point because we know that all of the properties along the streetcar line, we've been told, will magically transform into this wonderland of retail outlets and everybody will be successful and they'll all make money. So you're right. I guess the sewer line full of waste, as soon as it comes by it, you're right, it turns into liquid gold.
Liquid gold, my friend. Hey, what's the whole project going to cost?
Oh, we don't know that. We don't know that.
Hey, we got $11 million.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
$11 million. I can't wait. I'm downtown right now. Where's the car?
Another way that the Cincinnati streetcar will simply magically transform crap into gold. Spinning it into gold. Northside, Danielle, you're on 700 WLW.
Yes, actually, I like the streetcar idea. We're going to be like San Francisco. And what are you against it because a lot of gay guys want the streetcar and gay women?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure you're taking that seriously, but I appreciate the call. Tom in Loveland, you're on 700 WLW.
Hey, I remember reading back, I think it was either the Business Courier and the Inquirer. The reason they're not moving the sewer lines is MSDS, the sewer district, isn't allowed to spend the money to move them by the county.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the county won't throw in, so they don't have enough money to do it.
Yeah, and it's that stupid, the city runs the sewer department, but it's owned by the county. And the county says, nah, we ain't going to let the sewer district spend the money.
Right, so essentially their plan is, well, we can't get it done, we'll leave them where they are.
Yeah, well, this whole streetcar is going to be like Amtrak.
You think it's going to be that efficient?
Oh, hell no. The funny part about Amtrak is if you go on their website and you try to book a ticket, they're always sold out, but they're always losing money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you and I, remember, we subsidize the tickets on Amtrak.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you and I pay for everybody to ride Amtrak. Otherwise, the tickets would be 10 times what they are, or whatever the percentage is, would be what they are. You and I subsidize that. We subsidize people to fly on some airlines and some certain routes on airlines. You and I will subsidize the streetcar. We subsidize public transportation all across the country. And it looks like we're going to continue to subsidize it when it comes to the wonderful streetcar. Is it Charlene in Northern Kentucky?
Yes, it is.
Hi there.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. You got to like this in Northern Kentucky. Your tax dollars going towards it.
I'm just crazy about that. But my primary concern, he's head of transportation.
Ray LaHood.
Yes. How come they have overlooked the transportation of the Brent Spence Bridge and getting people from south to north daily, plus all the products that are taken across that bridge, all the vacationers that go places across that bridge? If they've got so much money and the bridge is not going to be there that long, it takes 10 years to rebuild it or more.
Charlene, I recall the president coming in over the summer, and he held that big press conference with the Brent Spence in the background, and how we need to fix this, and John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, I'm here in your district, we got to fix this. Well, I would think if it's that big of a deal that the president would fly here, not the transit, but the president, I would think they would funnel that $11 million over to the Brent Spence project, right?
I think so.
I mean, that comes down to prioritizing.
They were all talking so much about the infrastructure in the United States and in what bad shape some of the bridges, the dams, and roads and so forth. And yet they've got money to put in on a trolley. And what did he say? The trolley is catching on all over the United States. I don't think so.
Call me skeptical, Charlene, but that presidential visit over the summer may have been just for politics, just to campaign. I mean,
all of his visits are.
I know I'm being skeptical and cynical here, but maybe that's what it was. David and cell phone, you're on 700 WLW.
Yeah, I'm upset about all the thuggery going on in Hamilton County. Let's talk about the Metropolitan Sewer District. I'm a private business owner, and I can't hardly afford my sewer bills. We need our sewers repaired. As a private business owner, I'm getting like 67% of my water bill just for sewage disposal. Now, I've seen water meters, but I've not seen a poop meter. I mean, these people down there are really getting crazy. I mean, when you have a 20 unit and you're spending $3,600 a quarter, and 67% of that's going to the sewer district, why can't we use this money to fix up our infrastructure we have and get it back on shape?
Yeah, instead of taking on we know, and we've heard this for years, David, that infrastructure in America in general is close to a failing grade. There's so many projects that we need to redo, roads, bridges, tunnels, all of these things. And instead of taking care of the ones that we have, or even redesigning them so they're more efficient and whatever as we repair them, what we're doing is essentially starting new projects and still letting the old ones crumble. How about some prioritization here? Let's take care of those other ones. You're right. If the sewers are a problem, and they certainly are, fix the sewers rather than say we're going to build something over the sewers. So when eventually they fail, we have to rip it up and it's going to cost us a bunch of money. But remember, when it comes to Ray LaHood, the president, Mark Mallery, or any other politician, It comes down to building things above ground so they can get reelected. Doc Thompson, 700 WLW. All right, the days are ticking away, closing in on your chance to win that $1,500 gift certificate from James Free Jewelers in Montgomery. All you have to do is go to 700WLW.com, click on contests, follow the instructions, and then we'll draw for it probably on Tuesday. Then you get to shop with me on Thursday, probably about lunchtime. $1,500 gift certificate if you win it to James Free Jewelers. Very cool. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about streetcar coming up. We're going to talk about holiday tipping coming up at about 10:06. And I want to talk to the author of Bully, The Life and Times of Theodore Roosevelt, Rick Marshall. How are you?
All right. What's up, Doc?
How you doing, buddy? Hey, I'm really interested in your book because Theodore Roosevelt, right now, his name has come up a lot in the last couple of years when we've talked about the role of government. Theodore Roosevelt, although a Republican, was pretty progressive and what we consider liberal now in some of the things that he did and believed.
Well, yeah, the operative word in what you just said is now. I think I'm of the belief that look, he did expand the powers of the presidency. It sort of fit with his exuberance and everything. But America at that time was going through a lot of growth pangs, and it came together as a country. In the 90s, the frontier disappeared, and even when he was a cowboy, he went into the cattle industry. He was an entrepreneur, and he saw the railroads demanding kickbacks and the courts, acting in collusion, and the politicians going the other way. He saw the small businessman, the average citizen, really squeezed in a lot of ways, and individual states weren't doing anything about it, and that's just one reason he thought the federal government should maybe act as a referee and step in certain ways. Now, I think today, Doc, that he'd be aghast that a lot of his initiatives would be, turned into Frankenstein monsters, and the federal government would be so big. He would still, I think, have the same heroes today, the small businessman, the average citizen, and today his prescription would be smaller government.
See, that's the problem.
Fewer regulations.
Well, and that's the problem there. You got to be careful. It's the law of unintended consequences. Everything you do has a ripple effect. Everything a politician, a president supports, even if they do it for noble reasons, even if they do it because it's a nice thing to do and because they truly have a big heart and want to see people do well, often it ends up becoming something very bad. You've got to be very careful. It's not, Rick, it's not that, that I am evil or I simply hate people. On the contrary, I help people quite a bit in my own ways in my personal life. But when it comes to certain things like this, I recognize how quickly things can be skewed and can get out of control from any level of government. As soon as you take that step, it's very easy to take the next step and the next step after that. Yeah,
and there are two ways to deal with that. One is to be frozen and do nothing in the face of injustice, and maybe, he looked over the horizon. He thought there might be social war in America, and he's the only president regarded as great who did not have a foreign war or domestic crisis to put him in that category of a possible greatness, to achieve greatness. And part of it was because he saw these problems and dealt with it. So it's either don't deal with them because something bad may happen down the road, or deal with them and work and pray and inspire the public to stay responsible and don't let that stuff happen, the distortion and everything. I say in the book that Democratic Republic is not a perpetual motion machine, and one problem with Roosevelt's initiatives is that Roosevelt was not always around decade after decade to be that fair referee and keep things in check. So,
talking with Rick Marshall about his book on Teddy Roosevelt, I find him a fascinating character, but I find him having, and I know it's going to shock a lot of people, having the characteristics of actually a bully. I mean, not just because of the bully pulpit, but what you're talking about is he pressed issues that he believed in, even if they may have been contradictory. On one hand, he was out there for the little guy saying, we're going to make sure that people have safe food and, corporations aren't stepping on people. It seemed very nice or whatever. But then he could justify some of his bully tactics, like with the Rough Riders and the Panama Canal and all kinds of stuff, bullying other countries, individual citizens and their personal freedoms, all kinds of things. That's a bit of a contradiction.
Well, I'm not sure about individual citizens. what you mean by that. Panama, yeah, he
well, wait a minute. The citizens of Panama. I mean, he goes in there, and it was strong arm tactics, and the same thing with the Rough Riders.
Well, the Rough Riders, we were in a war, and I guess he treated the Spaniards pretty badly.
Yeah. So I mean, on one hand, you're in there, and I'm not saying certainly he was doing it under the guise of helping America, but if he's somebody that was really cared about the little guy, well, those were sovereign countries and people who were fighting for what they believed in.
Well, I'll speak for him and say if you're capturing a blockhouse on the way to Santiago and the enemy is shooting at you, I'd shoot back, I suppose. In Panama, what he did, sure, it was kind of strong arm, but the province of Panama seceded from Colombia, and unlike previous presidents, Roosevelt recognized that revolution.
But wait, I mean, the reason it seceded from Colombia was because we encouraged him to do that because we wanted to build the canal. I mean, we were instrumental in that.
Yeah, that may be. I mean, there's no paper on that, but obviously it suited our purposes, and we had been negotiating with Panama and Nicaragua for decades, and the French even had contracts with each of those countries. So, sure. But, I mean, the little guys, the Panamanians, got a country and made out pretty well, so that might have been a wash in the total picture, too. He wasn't shy about using power and apologetic, but he was very proud, Doc, of the fact that in 7.5 years of being president, not a shot was fired in anger at any country, any soldier of any country, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was a multifaceted genius, really.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly was. He had a healthy ego as well. I mean, he was frustrated by what Taft did or did not do following his presidency, because Taft was kind of his hand-picked predecessor. So he comes back, and what does he do? And he starts his own party. I think a lot of it became about Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, well, if you read the book, it's not going to seem that way. Roosevelt was the predecessor, by the way, but his successor. Yeah, one of the things that really tipped Roosevelt towards running in the primaries was that in 1911, Taft's attorney general brought suit in an antitrust case. There had been a panic in 1907, and the government approved the acquisition of Tennessee Coal and Oil by Standard Oil and J.P. Morgan forces. And in 1911, 4 years later, the government brought suit against that. Taft was in Roosevelt's cabinet at the time. He approved it also, and this was not vetted past Roosevelt when they considered the suit, and the implication of the suit, a clear implication, was that Roosevelt was either crooked or had been duped in that instance, and neither was the case, and as I say, Taft approved of it, and so he was a hypocrite, and Roosevelt said, well, my conservation programs are being trashed and everything else, and I'm going to start listening to the people who want me to get back into the race.
Yeah, it's an interesting book, and you think about we're going through a lot of the same philosophical arguments right now. But aside from that, Teddy Roosevelt was really a strong character and pretty interesting. He was pretty weak as a child, the way I understand it. He kind of built his body up and then became this great outdoorsman adventurer. He mapped out parts of South America. Is that right?
Yeah, after the presidency, went to Africa, collected 10,000 specimens for the Smithsonian and the Museum of Natural History in New York, which his father helped found. And then he went, 4 years later, went to Brazil and charted what had been called the River of Doubt, completely unknown tributary to the Amazon. And he almost died in the process. But
that story of him almost dying is amazing. He just laid there for, if I remember right, a couple of days in and out of consciousness and thought he was just going to die there.
Yeah, he lost almost 40 pounds. And as a matter of fact, he wanted to take morphine and take himself out, but he knew that his son and the other explorers would not have left his body there, would have carried him, and he would have been even more of a burden. So he did make it. But they call it the Rio Teodoro today in his honor.
Yeah, I knew they named some of it after. What happened to him there where he got sick? Was it a disease? Was it malaria or something?
Yeah, he was rescuing canoes. They couldn't. It wasn't a river. It was rapids and falls and high walls. They just couldn't. They had to carry the canoes all the time. It was just a nightmare. And at one time, a couple canoes broke loose, and he went in to get them, and his leg got crushed between the canoe and the rock, and it got infected. And
okay, so it was the infection.
Yeah, 105 fever, and his book on the subject is not full of swagger or bravado. It is so grim and realistic, and I tell you, just admire the guy. He was shot in the chest when he ran for president in 1912 from 5 feet away, and he demanded to be taken to the auditorium to deliver a speech, which he did for an hour with blood streaming down his chest.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, you got to give him credit there. He certainly he was not a wimp. He was not a wimp.
No.
All right, interesting stuff. Rick Marshall, the book is Bully, The Life and Times of Theodore Roosevelt. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Have yourself a great day. Doc Thompson, 700 WLW. Doc Thompson at 700 WLW. Lance's deal of the day. You get half off Gangsters Bar and Restaurant in Newport. It's $25 for only $12.50. You'd have dinner and drinks while enjoying the dueling pianos. Look for Lance's deal of the day at 700WLW.com. All right, there's some good news. Ohio's going to save a little bit of money, $15 million. In the grand scheme of things, it's at least a little bit of money they're saving. By combining the two primaries, the Democrat and Republican primary, into one date is going to save us $15 million. And at first, they weren't going to do that. But they ended up getting it done. They voted this week to combine the two of them. It'll save us $15 million. Now, it does put us in a slightly better importance when it comes to the national media, because it moves us up to Super Tuesday. We'll be with all the other states on Super Tuesday, March 6th. Georgia, Massachusetts, Texas, all the total of 11 states holding primaries and caucuses, March 6th now. That's cool. You got the Iowa caucus coming up January 3rd. A week later, you got the New Hampshire primary. The problem is those early primaries and caucuses skew all of the others. And you've had states jockeying for position saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and move ours up to right near the beginning because we want to be more important. And I can understand that every state and every citizen wants their vote to be as important as possible. They want to be on the front there, picking the president. But it really is not balanced when it comes to the rest of the states. So I guess everybody will continue to move theirs up and move theirs up. Well, then you got the different parties that oppose it. Well, we don't want you moving here. We don't want you doing that. If you do that, you're not going to count here. Why don't we simply say we're not going to disclose the results of the primaries until all of the primaries are over? Wouldn't that be easier? Or to say we're going to do it all on the same day? Doesn't that make sense? For president, we're going to do it all on the same day. Sorry. National, there it is. Then you don't have to worry about that. All right, there's some logistical problems of doing it all on the same day. Fine, we'll do it all on 2 or 3 Tuesdays in January, early February, whatever. We're not going to disclose. It's only a couple of weeks. Everybody gets to vote, done. You as a state would be able to pick one of a couple Tuesdays, depending on what's going on in your state for logistics, other races you have, whatever. And then after those 3 weeks are up, boom, then we'll release all the results. Otherwise, you got politicians that simply go to places like Iowa and campaign targeting a certain specific type of person or persons or voters. They come out as the lead. It skews what everybody else is going to do across the country. That's pretty silly. We have some real flaws when it comes to our voting system. All right, anyways, Ohio moving up to March 6th, saving $15 million. Doc Thompson, 700 WLW. Doc Thompson at 700 WLW. Got an email from somebody who shared with me a letter they got from their rural paper carrier. It's a note that was tucked into the newspaper. It's this very long letter about what's going on in the paper carrier's life and their kids and Christmas and on and on and on. And then the last 2 paragraphs really hit it. Santa brought me new tires already for Christmas. So I would really appreciate gas money and gas cards. as I stated in my Christmas letter last year. My round trip is about 100 miles a day. I fill up 3 times a week, and I have accustomed myself to using the tip money for gas after checking prices at gasbuddy.com. If you prefer, gifts can be mailed to me, and it includes the address. I recognize if you're a paper delivery person, maybe even in a rural area, that people may ask you, hey, what do you want? What's a good gift for you? You may get those questions. But to put it in a letter and assume that everybody out there is considering that seems a little odd. Just assuming that people are going to give you the gift. I mean, it's certainly nice to tip. I understand there's a lot of people hurting right now, and there's a lot of people that count on tips and could really use it, and that's great. I'm not sure assuming and putting in a letter, that comes across a little bit wrong. The one thing I've determined, though, if I followed the recommendations, if you go to all of the different Forbes magazine, Money magazine, all these different companies and magazines and websites that put out what is an appropriate tip, how much you should tip around the holidays, and who you should tip. If I follow those guidelines, I likely would not be able to pay my mortgage. I likely would not be able to buy groceries. Have you seen the lists of who you're supposed to tip? It is pretty much everybody that you come in contact with. I mean, really. And it's not a small tip. It's not like, well, give them $1 here or there. These are pretty sizable tips. Who should you tip? What are your standards for tipping around the holiday? Christmas gift at the end of the year. We're going to dive into that next. 10:06, 700 WLW, home of the best Bengals coverage.